1914 saw the dawn of a new kind of war, with men slaughtered on an industrial scale. So engineers invented ever more effective killing machines and horrendous new terror weapons. One of those weapons has been lost to history. I can guarantee you've never seen one of these before, but then hardly anybody has. This is a Livens flame projector, one of the most terrifying and bizarre weapons of the First World War. We're excavating the British front line as it was on the eve of the Battle of the Somme in 1916. What's more, we think one of those may be down there.
This is incredibly promising.
Not a single piece of one of these weapons has been seen for 100 years. But with the help of the Royal Engineers...
Good to go when you are.
We'll even attempt to rebuild it and test its deadly power. Mamay, a small village 100 miles north of Paris. Today it's a sleepy farming community, but a century ago it stood at the epicentre of World War I. In 1914, the advancing German armies were forced to a halt near here. When they ran up against Allied forces, the opposing troops dug in, and the infamous trenches of the Western Front were born. For 2 years, both sides threw millions of tons of shells and bullets at each other, but neither army gained any real ground. Eventually, the British generals decided to try a new tactic. On July the 1st, 1916, they launched a massive all-out assault against a 16-mile stretch of the German line. This was the first day of the Battle of the Somme. Along most of the front, the German line held. In just 24 hours, 60,000 men were killed or wounded.
Some of those men never even saw the enemy at all. Many of them never got over their own parapet. They were cut down as they came up out of the trenches.
But on a short section of the front near Mamay, things were different. At this one point, the Allies succeeded in punching through enemy lines. How did they do it? Historian Peter Barton believes the British breakthrough may be explained by the deployment of a horrific terror weapon. But to be certain, he needs to find one. He's brought a specialist archaeology team out to northern France.
I would like to find the most unusual weapon in the war. It's a weapon of terror. Best thing to do is show you an image of it.
Whew! It looks absolutely lethal.
It's called a Livens Large Gallery Flame Projector. It is 56 feet long, it's 14 inches wide, it had a 7-man crew, and it weighed 2.5 tons.
This looks incredibly vulnerable. It looks like any shell would be able to blow all this up straight away.
That's a very good observation, because this, believe it or not, was used from a tunnel.
By 1916, tunnels were crisscrossing the Western Front, a secret underground war. This is where Peter thinks the terror weapon was deployed.
When you pressurise the machine, the firing head, which was called the monitor, pushes itself through the surface like a dragon and starts firing automatically. And it fires a jet of burning oil 100 metres long.
Why do you think there's one here?
Well, the war diaries tell us that in this sector they were going to deploy one of these machines from a tunnel in no man's land here.
The war diaries are journals written by officers in the field. They tell us that in the early hours of June the 28th, 1916, 200 soldiers hauled pieces of the flame projector into a tunnel known as SAP 14. But before they could finish assembling this flamethrower, a German shell struck, burying the parts in the tunnel beneath tons of soil. If the war diaries are accurate, it may still be there. And luckily, Peter's got a map left behind by the men who built these underground tunnels. To understand why they were so important, I'm going with Peter for a lesson in the realities of trench warfare. So the whistle's gone, we've gone over the top. We're on our way through no man's land. We're heading towards the German lines over there. What's happening?
We are now in the killing zone, and they want to kill us. So now you are faced with machine guns firing 450 rounds a minute. You're faced with snipers, you're faced with infantry with small arms. So you're in the teeth of the gale, if you like, and you're being shelled with shrapnel.
For 2 long years, these tactics were repeated in battle after battle. Thousands of Allied troops were cut down, trying to cross the killing fields of no man's land. You can really understand, can't you, why people would have wanted there to be tunnels underneath no man's land, why they would have wanted not only their infantry to be protected in that way, but to get up some more armaments to protect those who were walking in this dreadful, slow way. Our map shows that in 1916, the German front line snaked right through this field. The Allies were dug in 400 feet to the south, and just behind their position, the map indicates 2 entrances to our target tunnel, SAP 14. This is where we hope to find the flamethrower.
You've got the sap in the orange and the pink. There we are, shallow sap, 2 entrances, down to a small chamber, and then it heads out, crosses under the British trench into no man's land. If you can find the trenches, then we should be able to find the entrances.
To get started, we need to bring in the big machines. They'll open up the ground in our hunt for the tunnel and the weapon that may be buried inside. All the time, we'll have to be very aware that we're digging around frontline trenches where soldiers lived and died. This trench feels like it's got a million different stories to tell, and we're only on the surface.
We've got a clip of bullets from 303, but that's just come out of somebody's ammunition pouch. What we've got is a rum jar. On the side of it, we've got the letters SRD, which stands for Service Ration Depot. A lot of the times the soldiers would say that it was seldom reaches destination. It would have been a wee bit of comfort to the guys in the cold in the trenches.
There's another bullet there and a great lot of them here. But my favourite find of all so far is this. It's a coin, and it appears as though it's been hit by a bullet.
Now, it seems hard to believe, but that may have been a coin that was in somebody's pocket. Now, I wonder if that helped to deflect a bullet, for good or bad.
Got to say, it doesn't look good.
This is pretty astounding, actually.
Yeah.
Small finds may be coming thick and fast, but the search for the flamethrower isn't proving easy. Tony, this trench is the size of St Paul's Cathedral.
And getting bigger, yeah. We've tried before doing keyhole trenches, and you just can't tell what's happening.
Yeah.
You've got trenches going all over the place. You need to be able to see an expanse of this area.
Soon after widening the dig area, we spot something just beneath the surface.
That's more like it.
Fantastic.
You see this colour change?
Oh, yeah.
Really
Very
nice
clear.
and straight, all the way along into the baulk there. And this looks like it's the back of the frontline trench.
If he's right and this really is the frontline trench, it'll be an important breakthrough. By contrast, just a few hundred yards away, the German trench network is clearly preserved in the woods. Why is this trench system so wiggly?
Well, that's to stop blast going straight down the trench. If a shell lands over there, the blast won't come around a corner. But the key defence here is beneath your feet. They're called dugouts. And about 20 feet down, you would find chambers in which 12 or 15 men would live with their weapons, and that's the key. This place was literally erupting with explosions, but the Germans underground were perfectly safe.
Back at the dig, Tony thinks he's made a breakthrough in identifying the British trenches.
Thankfully, after we've pushed back across the frontline trench, I can now happily say I know exactly where I am, and I'm standing just on that corner there. This is the frontline trench, and if I walk in this direction, turn this slight bend down here, and then the angle changes again, and that brings me to here, where this piece of wood is, and that may well mark the entrance into the sap.
Tony's convinced he's found one of the trenches that leads directly into the flamethrower's tunnel, SAP 14. It's a potentially major leap forward. We're hoping that within the trench we'll find an incline, a slope leading down to the sap. From the war diaries, we know there are 2 possible ways in, the western and the eastern.
If you look on the trench map here,
Yeah.
this is the eastern entrance to the incline.
So this is it?
This is it. This is it.
So this is really the significant part of the whole of the dig?
It is. That's the good news.
Yeah.
The bad news is that we know from the war diaries that this was blown up by a German shell in July 1916.
So it's completely wrecked and we can't get in. That's what you're going to tell me, isn't it?
Yeah. You can see we've got structural timbers here that are damaged, and all along I've been hoping that if this is gone, which the war diary suggested, the opposite entrance, the western entrance, will be well preserved, and so we've still got fingers crossed on that.
The diaries also tell us the two entrances should be 32 metres apart. With a shell blast leaving the eastern entrance inaccessible, we're now trying our luck at the western. This photograph, taken on the Somme in 1916, may show the actual entrance we're hunting. The doorway and the sap it led to were built by the 183 Tunnelling Company, an elite group of Royal Engineers. They were engaged in a deadly game of subterranean warfare. Their mission? Destroy the Germans' underground dugouts by tunnelling beneath them.
The perils of underground fighting are multiple. You can be entombed. The enemy can blow your tunnel in and you're stuck in this tiny tunnel. And you'll just run out of air and you'll suffocate. Or you can be totally obliterated, wiped off the face of the earth.
The 183 Company had been given a top-secret job: drive a tunnel or sap to the very edge of the German front line. It's this sap that we're now looking for, but it's just one of dozens that were dug all along the front from February 1916 on. They were built to hold mines to shatter German dugouts, and they led to secret hatches which would open near enemy positions. Deadliest of all, 4 saps held Livin's flame projectors. Born out of desperation, this was a new strategy for breaking through enemy lines. But here, at the far edge of the site, we think we may have found our way into the 183 Company's tunnel network. What is it you think you've got, Tone?
I think it's the western entrance to the incline.
Ah, the eastern one there was closed off, but this is the one that could be open?
Exactly, and as you can see, the structure to it, there are frames, there's this corrugated iron, which may have been the roof.
So what are you going to do?
We've got to go down here, see what that is, see whether it is the right kind of timber to go across, and then see whether we can get in there.
According to the attack plan, the flame projector was supposed to be fired from a short spur inside the sap. Peter's marked out its position in what would once have been no man's land.
At least 56 feet long.
That's the spot. Yep. So we can see how far we are from the British line. It's pretty well where the fence was. So they've driven that in a few months, and that's where it came up. So what you've got here is about 60 metres to the German line. So when it's pressurised, up it comes, pushes through the earth, pushes through the roots to about that height, turns towards the target, and then starts firing its jet of burning oil.
The projector was designed to hold enough fuel for 3 10-second blasts. In this short time, it was intended to fire over 1,300 litres of fuel. If it worked, it would generate a terrifying wall of burning oil that would fill the trenches and incinerate the men hiding inside.
Not all of it had burned by the time it reached the trenches, so it landed in the trenches and continued to burn. So you pretty well neutralised that section of line.
But our search for this horrific weapon is running into trouble. Here is where I thought the entrance of SAP 14 was going to be, which everyone was so excited about yesterday that they were going to excavate first thing this morning, and it's 5:20 and there's no work done on this at all.
Well,
what's going on?
There is. We've been hard at work on it. The problem is it's not the entrance to SAP 14.
Oh, you're kidding.
I wish I was.
At the moment, it's a bit of an archaeological mess, isn't it?
Yeah, I prefer the term puzzle, thank you, Tony.
An archaeological puzzle. Not a mess, it's a puzzle. It's a mess, really. Welcome back to the village of Mamet in northern France, where we're looking for the trenches and top-secret tunnels which were so important around here during the Battle of the Somme. But we're also hoping to find, and this is a really long shot, a Livin's flame projector, which was a massive Allied top-secret weapon which we think might be buried somewhere amongst all this mud. While finding our sap or tunnel has proved more difficult than we'd hoped, we're starting to get a unique look at the life of a First World War soldier. There's this glass bottle made in Glasgow for Baird's pickle, although I've no idea what Baird's pickle tasted like. There's this toothbrush, not very much brush, but look at that patterning on the back of it. Isn't that absolutely lovely?
There might be some markings on there.
L-O-N, London.
London. That's tremendous. Well found, Jim.
The finds are piling up, and they're painting a picture of the evolution of these trenches.
A French Lebel cartridge case which indicates the people who occupied these trenches before the British arrived.
The British Army took control of this sector in 1915, but the French dug many of these trenches the previous year. In 1914, they made a bloody stand in these very fields. Thousands were cut down trying to push the Germans out of France. Now we think we've found grim evidence of this fight. It's one discovery we hoped we wouldn't make.
Got a body. There's just a bit of pelvis.
Yeah. Material.
These are the bone. Yeah. It's fabric from clothing. I suspect it's trousers.
Yeah, just to
As soon as you make direct contact with human remains, your sensitivities change completely. My heart is now racing, I'm shivering, shaking, and it's just that total shock of impact.
With the authorities informed, Tony begins the painstaking process of carefully exhuming the body.
This is a soldier who lost his life, and we shall record him every due respect.
And while we'll probably never know who this man was, at least he'll finally be given a proper burial. One of the missing has been found. By 1916, after 2 years of fighting, thousands of soldiers had lost their lives. Both sides were becoming desperate to find tactics or technology that could end the nightmarish deadlock of trench warfare. Chatham in Kent is the base of the Royal Engineers. Back in the dark days of World War I, their experts were charged with finding a way of breaking through enemy lines. They experimented with trenches and tunnels, poison gas, and primitive flamethrowers. In 1914, a young Cambridge-educated engineer arrived here. His name was William Livens. What do we know about Livens?
He joined up on the very first day that war broke out and said, I want to get into action. But he didn't get to do that, unfortunately. He came here to REHQ in Chatham, where he was stuck in a signalling section.
So he was just a kind of glorified messenger, really?
Sort of, yeah, sending messages by motorbike here and there or by telegram, and he was desperately frustrated.
So what was the tipping point for him?
Well, that happened on May the 7th, 1915, and that was the sinking of the Lusitania. And Livens thought that his fiancée, Elizabeth, was on that ship. He checked on the passenger list and there was her name, so he believed that she was one of the 1,100 who'd gone down with the ship. And at that very moment, he swore that he would kill as many Germans, personally, as civilians that had gone down on that ship. 3 days later, he got a telegram saying she missed the boat.
So when he found out she was still alive, did he withdraw that vow?
He didn't.
What was his plan to kill all these people?
In one of these rooms around this square, he starts experimenting with poison gases and flame projectors, of course.
News of his inventions spread fast, and in time, the 25-year-old was put in charge of Z Section, a secret unit tasked with building flamethrowers. The early prototypes were death traps, more likely to burn their operators than their intended victims. Livens hatched an idea for a new type of flamethrower of unprecedented size and power. The entire device would be put together underground, hidden from enemy fire. Once assembled, pressurized gas would force a monitor head up through the ground, from where it would spray burning fuel right into the German trenches. If the plan worked, enemy troops would either flee in terror or be burned alive. Now we'll attempt a spectacular piece of experimental archaeology. The Royal Engineers trainee sappers are up for the challenge of making a working model of Livens flame projector.
We're going to hopefully use modern components. It's quickly deployable, a lot lighter, but will still do the job. We're going to use a centrifugal pump that will be driven by a diesel engine. It's a lot safer and a lot easier to control and manage. We spend 99% of our time trying not to set a light to fuel, but this one's going to burn, I'm sure of it. There is a lot to do, but I'm confident we can do it. After all, we are the Royal Engineers and we can do anything.
But they've got their work cut out for them. This is a complex machine to design and build, and the clock's ticking. Back in France, we've now dug down the slope of the incline and should be near the tunnel entrance.
4.6 metres.
This is a bit concerning, this. It's gone.
That's the bottom.
It looks like the timber was stripped by the original tunnellers and reused elsewhere. Without support, the incline simply caved in. It's the worst possible news.
I think so, yeah.
We've now used up a third of our digging days with little more to show for it than a collapsed incline, but we're not giving up yet. Despite the setbacks, our dig is uncovering a lost world that was once home to thousands of men. Peter, this is such a neat piece of archaeology. You've got the First World War trench there, and then obviously it would have continued in that direction and here and over there. What does it tell you about what life would have been like for the people who were guarding the front?
It's a deeply evocative piece of archaeology. Here we have an armchair. It's only a sandbag to us, but it was an armchair to those soldiers. This is the only place you could sit in this trench. There's nowhere else to go. You'd have your feet inspected, you'd have your rifle inspected, you'd receive letters from home, you'd write letters from home, and you wonder when this damn war was going to end.
So this was like their home, really, wasn't it?
Yeah, this was your home, you kept it clean, and you knew this as well as your home. Here, for instance, you've got petrol tin. Wouldn't have carried petrol, though. That would have carried water. That's the only way you could bring water into the trenches. It very often tasted of petrol. Down here, you've got... That's a tin of jam. Probably plum and apple. Yeah, astonishing. Tiny little slice of life, but a tiny little slice of thousands of lives.
We now know that one First World War incline has collapsed, and we're struggling to get where the flame projector might lie buried. So Tony and Peter are going back to the first shell-damaged incline for a second look.
I'm sure I've seen this before.
Yeah, I am. Okay, let's have a look. Steady, Commander. Voila.
That's it, that's it.
There we are.
They've dropped the toolkit.
Part number 323. A Livens cramp spanner.
It's our first major discovery, the toolkit used to assemble the projector. Solid evidence that we're on the trail of the Sommes terror weapon.
Here they are, Tony, look.
Yeah.
All laid out on the ground.
Dozens of them.
These tools would have been used by a 7-man crew to assemble the parts of the projector once they'd been hauled into the sap. And that's not all we found.
Yeah, there's clamps here.
That's what?
Clamps.
Oh, it's the clamps.
To make certain it could be quickly moved into a cramped tunnel, the machine was made up of hundreds of parts. Once underground, these sections were then put together using, you've guessed it, clamps.
Number 31. That's a monitor clamp with screw.
I'm stunned.
Peter believes this particular clamp was intended to hold the firing head in position. It's proof the projector was abandoned underground and that at least some of it is still intact.
Champagne's on you tonight.
I'm happy to buy it.
Sure enough, we soon turn up another intriguing metal object. What you got, Tony?
Well, I thought it was just a bit of a pump as it came out. This is the entrance that was blown in, and we started out with just some rusty metal. But look at this beautiful metal, perfect. It's huge.
You know what strikes me? That metal is unlike anything else that we've seen on this dig.
So I think we need to get Peter in and find out exactly what this is before we go any further.
It's flame projector.
Is it?
Is it?
There's no doubt that that's flame projector, yeah.
Why do you say that so quickly?
I've never seen anything else like it, and I can almost recognise it from I can see where it goes on the machine.
You're kidding me.
This is incredibly promising.
Do we know of any others of these that are still in existence?
I don't know of any part in any museum anywhere on Earth.
Well done.
Thank you very much.
Yeah, Pete, I must shake your hand. I never thought, when you brought me on this project, I thought we were onto a wild goose chase, but this is unbelievable.
Peter thinks he's found a key part of the machine, but for final confirmation, he's calling on Royal Engineer Steve Boylan.
Hi, Steve. Come and have a look
Hi,
at this.
Pete, how you doing?
Give me your professional opinion.
Well, straight away, unlike some of the other finds, we can tell this is a lot better quality metal. This is almost gunmetal with high qualities of nickel and chromium as well. But also, you can tell it's been professionally engineered and manufactured.
Yeah.
I think we're quite lucky to find such a distinctive piece, first of all.
I originally thought this was one piece, but it's two, isn't it?
Yeah.
That's separate.
I think that is a standard gate valve behind it.
There it is. This one is part 280, which is this one.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
This one.
that's looking at it from this angle. And then this one, which is 271.
And that would be the last valve before the actual monitor.
And that's fantastic.
Great.
Thanks, Steve. Thanks
Okay,
very
Pete, no
much.
problem.
According to Steve, this valve was the trigger. Once opened, hundreds of litres of fuel would race forward, causing the machine to rise up and punch through the soil. There was nothing else like it on the Western Front.
OK, play it this way.
Oh, God, that's heavy.
OK, I've got it.
You got that?
We've got our hands on a critical piece of this terrifying weapon. Peter now wants to get it cleaned up to take a closer look. It's really cleaned up now, isn't it?
Beautiful. We're still taking some clumps of dirt off it. We don't want to do too much to it, obviously, before the conservators get to it.
It's hard to believe that it's practically 100 years old. It's in such good nick.
So good, in fact, that if you look down there and I turn this, can you see the valve moving?
Yeah, absolutely.
Opening and closing. That's phenomenal, really, after almost 100 years in the ground, which says it all, really, about British engineering.
Of course, now we've got this, it immediately asks the question, can we get any more of it?
I'm hopeful that as we get into that destroyed incline, we will find more pieces.
With our digging days fast running out, there's no time to waste. There should be more parts at the bottom of the incline. We could be about to hit the jackpot. Time's running out on our hunt for a lost World War I flamethrower. We've made some real breakthroughs in recent days, finding tools, clamps, and even the firing valve. But the real prize would be some of the biggest sections of the machine.
That sounds hollow. That's hollow underneath that.
Yeah. Gary, can I come down?
Of course you can, yeah.
But there is a little void underneath.
It looks like we've found the wooden roof of the incline that once led to the sap.
There's a wall here as well.
If we're right, this could be the very spot on which the exploding shell buried the flamethrower. With the top of the incline located, we're crossing our fingers that the remainder is still buried beneath our feet. So with the help of the Royal Engineers, we're starting to explore it.
The epicentre somewhere here.
Yeah.
Isn't it? This chap's filling the barrow faster than I can move it.
What we find is quite astonishing. An impressive 30-foot stretch of shell-blasted roof and walls.
A very nice job, boys.
Well, this is really exciting.
And look how it's twisted. It's just like a big roller coaster.
Yeah. It's tremendously steep. I'd rather be carrying a flame projector down it than bringing it back out again.
Yeah. We've got a lot more work to do in here. We're nowhere near the bottom yet.
No.
But just as things are looking good, we run head-on into an unexpected problem. We were hoping the incline would lead us into the sap entrance, but after following it for 40 feet, it simply disappears.
That's the end. That is the end.
So there's nothing, no more timber beyond there?
No more timber. They've recovered everything from here.
It looks that way.
Apart from the timbers at the top, all the wood was salvaged by World War I engineers. The incline and SAP 14 must have caved in. It looks like our secret tunnel has gone for good. But despite meeting this dead end, we're not giving up hope of finding the largest pieces of the flamethrower. And we should be able to better understand its power and impact with the help of our big experiment. The Royal Engineers have spent the past weeks designing and assembling their flamethrower simulator. Now they're ready to put it through its paces.
Yeah, when it does start up, you've got direct...
Project leader Staff Sergeant Steve Boylan needs to be confident that the pumps work and the system is correctly put together. Any small leak or blockage could prove fatal. So today he's pumping water through the system to test it.
This really is quite a big moment for me, because everyone spent so much time and trouble researching the flamethrower, and they've pinned all their hopes in it. And now, for the very first time, I can see it. Steve!
Hi, Tony.
Wow, this is something, isn't it?
Thanks very much. I'm glad you like it.
I didn't say that, I said it's something.
It is something, yeah.
So what is it that you want to try and find out today?
It's the first time all of this has been put together like this. We want to see that it works, we want to see that it pumps, we want to see that it produces pressure.
Peter, come over here for a minute. This is your baby. How are you feeling?
I'm just delighted to be working with people who know exactly what they're doing. I mean, this is an absolute monster.
Yeah.
Livin's machine was powered by compressed air, but the Royal Engineers are reproducing the effect with a powerful diesel engine.
This is what's going to bring it all out from these tanks here, basically, one at a time. So these 4 tanks will hopefully represent our 4 shots.
For the main event, these bags will be filled with diesel and kerosene, but for today's test firing, they're holding water. 2,000 litres per minute will be sucked out and pumped through to the nozzle.
Are we ready to go?
I think we're ready to go, Tony. We're certainly ready for our first shot, if you want to see what it looks like.
Let's go for our first shot. I'll get out of the way.
With the all clear given, it's time to see this thing in action.
Oh, there it goes.
Very impressive, Steve.
Yeah. That's 2,700 litres in a matter of seconds. So that's going to give off some flame and some heat. Wind it down.
Even though we weren't in the direction of the wind, we were still being covered with a lot of spray. But imagine how dangerous that would have been to the lads behind it.
Especially feeling that mist on your skin. If that's oil or flame, it would have been horrendous, it really would have been.
With the fuel, it's going to be absolutely essential that the wind is in the right direction, otherwise we're not going to be able to use it at all.
Certainly, and that's what we want to avoid on the day.
But you're going to have a fiddle with it.
We're going to have a fiddle, a tinker with it and see what we can do.
The test firing with water worked well, but for the real thing, we'll be using Livin's original explosive fuel mix. It'll be a risky operation. We'll need to fire the jet a whole lot further than we did today, meaning a major redesign. While the Royal Engineers crack on, Peter's keen to show me just how close SAP-14 finally got to the German trenches. By the day of the big push, July the 1st, 1916, it extended 300 feet under no man's land.
We've taped out the line of the sap, and you can see it comes right to the German line. So beneath our feet here, there would have been 2 board mines, and they were blown on the moment of zero, 7:30 a.m., 1st of July 1916.
And what was the effect of that?
It blew in 2 German dugouts, possibly containing machine guns, a sniper's post, and it would have wrecked their front line completely. So what it really did was neutralise this part of the line. Immediately after that, from this point here, out popped a party of men from the manhole and went straight into the German trenches. So anybody in other dugouts coming up will see there's British soldiers here. What can you do?
Were there many casualties?
The company who attacked from our line over there, a minute and a half away across no man's land, had no casualties at all.
This seems to fly in the face of everything that we've always learned about the Somme. Was it a fluke?
Well, it appears that wherever the saps were used with ingenuity, there is a correlation between success and the use of saps, where they had clever and intelligent use of these saps, flamethrowers, mortars, machine guns, mines. They gained all their objectives. Elsewhere, nothing.
By the end of the day on July the 1st, 1916, the Allies had cut through the German line and pushed deep into enemy territory. For the first time since the war started, Mamet was back in Allied hands. To the east, attacks were launched from almost a dozen saps driven by the 183 Tunnelling Company. And Peter has also learnt that this is where Livin's secret weapons saw action that day. Hours before the battle, the flame projectors were hauled into saps. A shell struck the one in Sat 14 where we're digging, but the others made it into position.
Just on the ridge over there where the two trees are, they've managed to get two in use.
At 7:30 a.m, Livin's monstrous creation made its debut on the Western Front.
It was really instilling dreadful terror.
The machines worked, engulfing the German front line in a sea of flame.
Once that flame was burning across here, it drove the Germans into the dugouts, and when they came up again, the trenches were full of British troops.
In this one sector, miles of enemy territory were now in Allied hands.
After the 1st of July, what happened to the whole notion of digging tunnels under the no man's land?
They took it up immediately. By the 3rd of July, they'd already put into place schemes for more saps, a hell of a lot more saps, on the places where they'd not made any gains. And I'm talking about quadrupling the number.
But as for our trenches, we still haven't found the biggest parts of the flamethrower, and we've only one day left. Mamay, France, and our entire dig has come down to the wire. At the bottom of our incline, we're ready to start removing heavy timbers. We think we may be closing in on a key part of the giant flame projector.
So you've got the sling round it now?
Oh, he's got it, he's got it, he's got it. Lift, 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 lift.
Oh, well done, Johnny. Oh, fantastic.
As we yank out the planks, we spot something in the clay.
What is it, Gary? Is it metal?
It's quite substantial. It's about 8 to 10 inches wide.
Yes.
In diameter. Looks like it could be a tank.
Oh boy. It could be the firing tubes. There were 7 of those.
It sounds hollow.
Gary, do you think you're going to have to extend that hole, or do you think you can get it out as it is?
We're definitely going to have to extend the hole, and there's a flange on the end of it.
That's
There's a flange right on the end of it.
exactly
Stands out about that far.
correct.
He
Correct.
knows it's correct, he can feel it.
He's never felt one before. Nobody's felt one for 90 years, Tony.
Peter thinks we've found one of the most important parts of the flame projector, its firing tube.
Where they actually held the fuel and the piston pushed the fuel through into the firing head.
If we have got what we think it is, that's going to make the whole dig worthwhile, isn't it?
Completely. Problem is the
But
water's
there's a
covering
catch.
it.
Rain has destabilised the banks, and we can't risk digging here for long.
This bank's given us a bit of concern on this side, so we don't want to waste too much time.
Be careful, mate.
With just hours left, we launch a last-ditch effort to retrieve the piece.
It would be fantastic to get that one out.
Ah, thanks, chaps.
Oh, lovely. Nicely done, sir.
It's like an ancient cannon coming out of the seabed.
Right, give him room.
OK, that's it. We'll set it there.
Can you identify the part?
I can. Part number 321, projection pipe, plain.
How you feeling, Tony?
Amazing, really, given what we faced this morning. I never thought we'd get here. It's incredible. Well done, Pete.
Well done, guys.
With the artefact out of the ground, there's one last job to complete.
Royal Engineers, come on.
The honour is reserved for some specific members of our team.
It's rather touching, that. 90 years ago, their predecessors brought that through the trenches and carried it down. And now it's Royal Engineers from 2010 carrying it out.
Double then.
Makes you feel rather tearful in a way. It really does.
We've now found several major parts of the flamethrower, the archaeological result we were hoping for. But was the flamethrower really responsible for an isolated British success amidst the carnage of the Somme? It's time to put it to the test.
Take off a little one.
Back in Chatham, Staff Sergeant Steve Boylan and the Royal Engineers have been hard at work. They've completed the redesign of their experimental flame projector and are now getting ready to fire it up.
It's a lot of work gone into it, though, isn't it? It's much bigger than it was before.
This construction is very sturdy. Thick, heavy pipe, an I-beam behind it, and we certainly don't want this to move.
So how are you going to ignite the fuel as it comes out through the nozzle?
We've got 2 welding torches and we've got the flames crossed, and we're going to fire the fuel through them flames.
You've got a new nozzle as well. That's tighter, is it, than the other one?
Yep, we've got a nozzle on there. It's very true to Levin's original system. We've copied his original one, and hopefully it'll do the job.
That's the valve then, Steve. That's the fast-acting shut-off valve, yeah?
Yep, that's the fast-acting shut-off valve. It's very key. It's operated by air, and its job is to slam shut the supply of fuel. Also to open it, but it's a key piece of equipment.
This dead man's switch is critical to the team's safety. After each firing, the valve will be slammed shut, instantly cutting off the fuel supply. It should prevent the flame travelling back down the pipe and igniting 5,000 litres of fuel. If it fails, the entire site could go up. On the other hand, this test could still turn out to be something of a damp squib.
I'd be embarrassed if we can't set a light to it. If we can't ignite, a lot of kerosene with welding torches, we haven't done our job.
So, sleepless nights for you then for the past few weeks?
I've got a bet on it. I'm confident it'll go, but that would be my biggest worry, it doesn't ignite.
Well, good luck.
Front gate cordon, can you please close the gate, over?
What are they using here? Oxyacetylene torches?
Yeah.
It's a very, very peculiar feeling to be here. It's been in my head day and night for years. It's as if everything up to now has been academic, and now it's become something very different.
Steve's hoping the torches will ignite the fuel as it sprays from the nozzle.
I can feel my blood pressure rising.
But he's not sure whether it'll work. The jet of fuel may simply blow out the torches.
Okay, moving off.
We'll start the pump.
To improve his odds, Steve's starting out with a shot of pure kerosene. Kerosene burns very easily, but there's one drawback. In this volume, it may simply produce a giant ball of burning gas rather than a neat jet of flame.
Good to go when you are.
With the valve open, there's no turning back. Tony and Peter are watching from as close by as the safety rules allow.
Oh, that's astonishing.
Feel the heat.
Stand back, Tony. That's exactly like the photographs. God, that is
Good
horrific.
grief.
That is horrific.
That's burning my face.
Yeah.
Wow.
I'm going to have to move back. Good Lord.
Wow!
Exactly like the photographs. Oh, God.
Slow.
Brings tears to your eyes, doesn't it?
That was very uncomfortable. That is horrific.
It's worked. But now the engineers want to see if they can produce an effect that's even closer to the real thing. In 1916, Livins added diesel to his fuel mix.
The diesel's in there to give it extra thickness and carry, and also to make sure it stays alight when it reaches the German trenches. So some of it's alight as it's going over there. It lands in the trenches and then it catches fire, so whoever's in the trenches.
If they succeed in igniting this mixture of diesel and kerosene, the effect will be as close to the original weapon as we can possibly get.
Okay, Clarky, good to go when you are.
With diesel in the mix, the results are even more dramatic.
That's getting afterburn with the gas.
That's reigniting, isn't it?
Yeah, it is. Oh.
Oh. Leg on my eyebrows.
Dear God almighty.
Wow.
Just a bit extra diesel, you see what that does. That's exactly what he wanted to achieve in 1916. Anything the oil landed on which would burn, would burn.
Well, everything is.
So there's no escape from that. My lips are burning.
With the fuel gone, it's time to shut this experiment down. We can only imagine the effect this appalling weapon would have had on German troops. It's a sobering illustration of how bitter and desperate trench warfare had become. Livens created his weapon of mass destruction in a remarkably short space of time.
Within 25 weeks, it's gone from the page, the first pencil sketches on a page, to being deployed on the Somme. So that's devising, designing, building, testing, training, transporting, rebuilding, and using it on the 1st of July 1916. That's an unbelievable achievement.
The weapon did its job on one day, on one small section of the front. But it didn't change the overall course of the war. In fact, British forces fired this type of flame projector only once more in 1917.
You needed very specific conditions to use a weapon like this. The front had to be static, and once it started moving forward, there was very, very few opportunities. The advance had to stop for you to reuse it.
As war dragged on, Livens continued to develop weapons. Then, in 1918, 3 years after vowing to avenge the sinking of the Lusitania, he returned home to his young family.
He didn't stop designing, but one of the most bizarre things about this really bizarre life is the next thing he designed was nothing to do with weapons. It was an electric dishwasher.
After the First World War, the giant flame projector and weapons like it were banned under international law. It was a true instrument of horror, a monstrous creation from one of the darkest chapters of history.